Hey guys, it's Sister back. I wanted to talk about my latest face study, my latest portrait, which is probably the most I've ever pushed a portrait in a while, and I wanted to talk about the rules of realism. So I didn't record all the start of this painting. I kind of just jumped towards middle half or past middle render for the eyes, because this is mostly about those details at the very end. And the way to manage those, of course, I've established before that you have to have a good foundation of good values and shadows, and just a really good response to the light source, building dense against non-dense or organic structures on the face, being able to differentiate between fat and bone, and what that does to the light climb. When you're done with all of that and you're at the stage where you feel like your painting could go a little bit further or it looks too unfinished for you, it might look finished to others, but to you it's missing something. Detail is pretty much the only way. And the biggest rule is the illusion of detail is the way to detail. You're not actually painting in every single little pore the way you would with photorealism. You're not painting in like pixel by pixel for every freckle or pore or hair or wrinkle or anything like that. What you're doing is you're creating the illusion, you're filling the area with the detail that it's required with less detail than there is in the real world, but just until it meets its requirement. So what I did around the eyes is I brought in some wrinkles around the eyes because it's kind of a downward tilt in the face, and the lower eyelids were going to wrinkle on each other because the eyes are open. And so I knew I needed some, this is probably like 4 different references used for this, and since I reformatted my computer, I haven't been able to find 2 of them. But for one of them, there was an older woman's face and had really pretty wrinkles, but I couldn't duplicate all those wrinkles. It's not the same age, so I couldn't share the same kinds of wrinkles on this face, which is much younger. But I did kind of just take some of the wrinkles, not all of them. So that means that we're creating the illusion of the texture. We're not actually painting the thorough texture itself. So that means we are, for every 5 wrinkles you find around an eye in a photograph, you choose only 2 of them. And the 2 that you choose can't be evenly spaced. They have to have a randomness to them, a randomness of like an organic randomness in nature. Around the mouth, if I was going to detail around the wrinkles of the mouth, if the photograph had 10 wrinkles across, I choose probably only 4 or 3. Tops probably 7 if I really wanted to accent the lips. I always under-render a lip. The rule is an under-rendered lip is a well-rendered lip. It's a very non-dense, mushy, organic structure, so you have to make sure you keep detail away from that because of that reason, and also because the eyes are the focus. So that's another thing I wanted to talk about. When you fully render a painting or you fully want to render a face, you have to choose the focal point because that's what you're rendering the most, and everything is a step down from that. Of course, on average, everything is more rendered than you usually do, but compared to the eyes, everything should be a step down. So how I detailed around the nose, I didn't paint any freckles around the nose or any pores or spots, but I did super render the edge of the nostrils. That's a very important edge. Around the lips, I brought in the detail and the highlight spike of the lower lip, and I brought in detail around like the surface detail. But when it came to the eyes, I went for the lashes, for the tiny little wispy eyebrow hairs. And the lashes, as you can see, I don't have hundreds of lashes and there are hundreds of brush strokes. So for every 50 lashes, we choose only three lashes. And it's not some sort of universal thing. You actually have to remember the amount you're allowed per feature, per section. So lashes, you can't really get away with single little brushes for every single hair. You have to clump them together and create this general description of what's happening in that texture. So that's one final little thing I want you to keep in mind when you are painting faces and you really want to push the realism as far as possible. It's all about texture and rendering the texture of the face. That's how you push the realism. Once you're done with rendering all the features and their function and anatomy, you're left with textures, hair texture, skin texture. The rule is a texture can't be duplicated exactly. The anatomy of the texture comes when it's transferred into a painting, can't be transferred exactly as a photograph. The anatomy of a texture is like the dance of the texture, the surface illusion of the texture. So we have a really, really messy brush and the wispy ends of a brush to create the feeling of a hairline. We don't actually draw every single hair in that hairline. Around the eyebrows, I only used probably 2 brush strokes for the hair brows, but everything else was pushed through just the brush's texture. So the brush's texture rendered for me, but I was in control of it. It wasn't just some crazy stamp brush. Around the lips, I allowed the tail and the grain of the brush strokes that I used to leave behind that vertical texture around the lips when they close up. So that's something I smudged away only slightly, but leaving behind some. And the biggest and most dangerous thing about pushing rendering all the way is shrinking your brush. So we've talked about the illusion of the texture, using the brush's texture, that it comes with some kind of messy, grainy texture, and then you just work with blending and making pretty much your brush is large the whole time to push the render. But when it comes into actually shrinking your brush and creating raw texture, be very careful after you've chosen like 5 of those hairs, or after you've chosen 2 of those wrinkles that you see in the reference for your painting. After you pick and choose which areas you really do want to transfer, you're going to have to do that with a small brush, and that's the biggest danger. There's 3 ways to render, and the 3 ways to render are edge work, which is something you have to push. So if you want to push your painting as far as possible, you have to start with the edges. You have to make sure all edges are as sharp and clean as your photograph. That's something you can transfer over. An edge is an edge. It's form. It's no longer crazy photo reference anatomy, pixel for pixel rendition. An edge is an edge. It's part of the form language. Contrast, you can borrow the exact same contrast in your reference. So that's another way to detail, by raising the lights and bringing down the blacks from black to white, and you have a wider range, and so you have deeper darks and higher elevations. That's something you can transfer from your photo reference completely. But the one thing you cannot and should never transfer over exactly in your reference is the shrinking of your brush, which is the last way to render something. And if you combine all those 3, you get a fully rendered painting. But the last one is the most dangerous. It's the one that students fall into a lot, and they think that they can apply that one as they applied the first 2. You cannot apply that last one. Once you're done completing the painting with those first 2, as I said, you have a good plate, a good foundation of form language. You're only allowed some brush strokes. You're only allowed a handful of brush strokes in that tiny 5 pixel width to 1 pixel width size brush. So again, around the lashes, we don't paint all the lashes, we choose some of them. The wrinkles inside the iris and the pupil, we choose some of them. Around the lips, we choose a very, very small amount, low contrast, so that we stay away from pulling focus away from the eyes, which always have to be there. So you notice that there's never really a point where you're across the finish line and you can finally start breathing. That's when you finish the painting. But for the entirety of the painting, you have to moderate yourself. There are so many rules to keep in mind. But with practice and mileage, you build your own awareness of when you're stepping outside of the lines. Shrinking your brush should raise an alert for you instantly. It's like this healthy level of anxiety that we have when we're painting inside, way zoomed in. Just something pulls us out of the painting so we can focus again. When we've been spending way too long, or the painting looks too good and it's kind of suspiciously too good, we have to step back and flip the canvas. So being aware of the fact that you cannot shrink your brush that much, that if you're spending too much time, that 30 minutes have passed and you're still on your small brush working on one eyebrow area, you know you've done something wrong, and you've undermined everything that you did in the first everything that you've been doing until you started detailing. So that's a lot of stuff to go and ruin. And that's why I say it's dangerous. It's not just because of a fundamental thing, and it's not a taste thing that you should stay away from shrinking your brush for too long. I mean, you have to for rendering, as that's the point I'm making. You have to, but the point is you have to make sure that you are keeping your actual shrinking of the brush at a small time frame in the actual painting. You look at the painting and you're like, oh wow, that must have taken the artist so long because look at all that detail. It's really not. Like I said, it's the illusion of texture. It's only a couple brush strokes. Count them. Next time you see a painting that's been fully rendered, I'm not talking about photorealism because that's just human printing. Like, you should just be a human and you're a printer and that's it. That's like the only talent there. You're actually copying it pixel for pixel. I'm talking about when you combine many references, you generate your own, you're bringing in your own taste, your own rules, your own choice in lighting. Next time you see a painting like that, that's really freehand, and it's fully realistic, go in there and count how many brush strokes they actually did use for the eyebrows, and you will not count more than 10. I promise you. It's weird if you count more than 10. There's something went wrong. In one area, you have 10 tiny little brush strokes. There must have been like 50 brush strokes for the lashes alone, which is real big no-no. It's very cheesy. It looks very amateurish. What you want to do, again, is create the illusion of texture. All my favorite artists. And one day I'm going to reveal all my favorite artists to you guys. I don't really talk about them much because I like to keep it more as a... I share everything about my art journey, and it's not sharing my art, my idols, has been more of the private thing that I've kept to myself. But one day I'll share them all, and I will talk about how a lot of the stuff that has been inspired in my art has come from them, and the way they've managed to moderate themselves and make sure that they follow all these rules. And the biggest rule I learned from them is they have managed to, from the zoom out level, generate so much detail with just a couple of seconds of brush strokes, which is phenomenal to me, and it's something I'm always trying to do. I'm still at the point where I make it look like it took a little bit of time, but it actually took a lot of time. But for them, it actually took them very little time to pull off that awesome edge or that texture or that surface contrast or something like that. Thank you everyone for watching. I really wouldn't be doing this without you guys. Thank you for your patronage. I really appreciate the support. Bye.